In every modern web application, role-based access control is a key security mechanism that ensures users have access to the data and actions that are appropriate to the roles within an application. In this video, we are going to build a Node Express project and we will implement authentication and authorization based on roles. So if this sounds interesting, then stick around. Also, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. So let's get started. Alright guys, so before we jump to the Visual Studio Code and start building our project, let's go through some slides and understand about the project structure. So we are going to build the Node.js Express role-based access control project, and this is how our project structure will look like. We are going to have a Node.js application which is going to have our app.js, which will be the main entry point of the application. Then we are going to have the config, routes, controller, middleware and models, and then we are going to use the MongoDB database for storage. Now in this routes and controllers, we are first going to handle the authentication part where we will allow the users to register themselves and then they can log into our application. So this will be the first part, which will be the authentication. The second part will be the APIs for the users. So we are going to have different set of APIs. First one will be the API users admin, API users manager and API users user. Now depending upon the account you have created and the role assigned to you, whether you are an admin user, manager user, or you are a simple user or an employee, you will be able to access the user routes. So let's say if you have a role which is an admin role, then this type of an account which has a role as admin can access all the user routes, whether it's an admin, manager or a user. Now let's say you have a different user who has a role as a manager, then this manager user can only access the manager and the user route. And the third one is the user role. So if you have a user role, then you can only access the user, and for the other routes, which is the /manager and the /admin, will have the access denied for this particular user. Since now we understand the nature of our project, let's go to the Visual Studio Code and let's build this project from scratch. So I will jump to the Visual Studio Code. Alright, so now we are in the Visual Studio Code and you will see that I have a simple folder which is the Node.js RBAC tutorial. Now in this, the first thing we have to do is we will go to the terminal, and for this project you will need to have a Node.js into your machine. So I have a Node.js installed. If we go to the node-v, then you will be able to see that this is the version which I have installed in my machine. And along with the Node.js, you will also have the Node package manager, which will be the npm-v, and that is going to give you the version of the Node package manager you have installed on your machine. If you don't have Node.js, you can just go to the official documentation and then you can just download the executable and then execute it on your machine. And you will also need a Visual Studio Code in order to follow this project along. Now the first thing what we have to do is we need to initialize our Node.js project. So for that we are going to use the npm init-y, and this is going to give us the package.json file. So I'm going to hit enter and we see that we have the package.json file. So I can go to the package.json file and we can just go through it. So we have a name, which is the name of our project. We have a version, we have a main, which is the index.js, which is the entry point to our application. So in the slides I have shown it as an app.js, but maybe for the project I can just keep it as an index.js. There will no problem in it. We have the scripts and then we have the keywords and everything. Now the first thing what I will do is I'm going to install all the dependencies that I will need for my project. So we can go here. I will just clear the console, and the first dependency which I want is I'm going to use the npm install, and we are going to install the Express, which is going to give us the Express framework to build this project. Then we will need the JSON web token because we are going to manage the JWT token. So we will need the JSON web token. Then we will also need the bcrypt library, which is going to help us to hash the password, as we are not going to store the raw password into the database. So for that I will be using bcrypt.js. All right, then we are also going to access some variables from our .env file. So for that let's have the .env package, and at last we are going to use the MongoDB database. So I'm going to use the Mongoose, and we can just hit enter, and this will install all the dependencies into our project. So we will just wait for a while. Now you see that the dependencies are already installed. We have the bcrypt.js, we have the .env, Express, Mongoose and JSON web token. Now we will also need the node-mon into our project. So what I will do is, so I will clear the console again, and then I'm going to use the npm install node-mon --save -dev. So this is, we are going to install it as a dev dependency. So I'm going to hit enter, and then we will be able to see that now we have a dev dependency object here, which is giving us the node-mon. Now we have the node-mon. So what we can do is we can just add a script here to run our application. So I'm going to use here dev. All right. And in dev, what I will do is I will have the node-mon, and in the node-mon, I will give the source, and then I will have the index.js. Now you must be wondering that we don't have a source folder. So how we can do this? So what I will do is, the next step is obviously we are going to create all the files that are required for this project. So let's create the folder first. So I'm going to have my source folder. All right. I will also going to create the .env file into the root directory. So I will have the .env file where I'm going to put all my environment variables. Now we have the source folder here. The first file we need is the index.js. That will be into the source folder. Now we are going to create a couple of folders and file structure first. And once we have all the folders and file structure, then we are going to write code into it. So let's say first we need to start with the config, which is going to help us to have the database connection. So I'm going to have the config. Then after the config, I'm going to create the routes, which will have my routes here. Then once we have the routes, we will need the controller to build the logic for the routes. All right, we have the controller. Then we will also need the middleware. So let's have the middleware folder, which is going to have all the middleware. All right, so maybe I will give the middlewares, and this I will just change it to controllers because it's going to contain multiple controllers. Then we will also need the models. So I'm going to go here. We are going to have the models folder. So now let's go and let's start with the index.js. Now in the index.js, what we will do is first we need to import the express. So let's have the express, constant express, and this will be require. And we are going to have the express here. Once we have the express, we will also need the .env file so that we can take few variables which we have defined in the .env. So I'm going to have the require, and we are going to use the .env, and then we will have the config here. All right. So this is how you are going to be able to access the variables that you are defined in your .env into your project. And for that, you will need this .env package. Once we have this, what we are going to do is let's create a simple app. So I'm going to have the app, and this app will come from the express. Now you have the app, you will also need to put the middleware. So here we are going to put the middleware, and the first middleware I'm going to use the app use, and we are going to use the express JSON, which is going to help us to get the JSON data. All right. Now we will also need to define the routes here. Currently we don't have the routes, but I will just keep it as it is. And then let's have start the server, where we need to define the port. So let's go to the .env file, and here I can define my first variable as port, and I'm going to give the port as 7001. Okay, I will save it. We go here, and here I will create a variable which is a constant port, which will be equals to, so if we want to get any value from the .env, we use process.env dot the property name, which is the port. If this value is not available or an undefined, then we are going to use the or operator, and then here we can have the another port 7002. All right, now we can just listen our app. So I will have the app listen, and you need to listen to a port which we have defined, which also gives a callback here. So in this callback, what we can do is we can simply have a console.log. We will use the backticks, and then we are going to have server is running at port, and then we can just give over the port. So I will have the port. So if we want to just check, then we have already created a simple express server, and if we want to run it, we can use npm run dev, and this is going to run our application. So you can see server is running at port 7001 as it is picking the value from our .env file. All right. Now we have done this. The next step, I think we will go for the database connection. So for the database connection, we will need a connection string. So we are going to use the MongoDB Atlas. So if I go to the browser, then here you will see that I am using the MongoDB Atlas, and I have created my project and everything here. So you just need to create a new project. You can click on new project here, and then you can define your users and cluster and everything. And I'm using this RBAC, which is the role-based access control. All right, you can click on it and you can go to the project, and you can also need to have your IP address because your current IP address is not added. So you can just click on the add IP address. Now once you add your IP address, you need to connect it. So you can just click on the connect, and here you can actually connect using the drivers. So you can click on the driver and you can just use your connection string here. So I'm going to copy this, and then I will go to my Visual Studio Code, and in the .env what I will do is I'm going to use the new string, which is the connection underscore string, and this will be equals to the value which I am putting it here. All right, so I have this value. Now you can just replace the password which you have added whenever you created this cluster, so you can just use that password. All right, now one more variable we need to add is the JWT secret, which is the JSON web token. So for that I will simply add the secret, and I can simply add any value. So I will add the my secret key. You can define anything else which should be more meaningful. So that's how you will have now 3 values in your env file: the port, the JWT secret, and the connection string. All right, so now we have all the values in our .env, and we were working on our database connection. So let's go to the config, and in the config what I will do is I will create a file which will be dbconnect.js. all right, and here I'm going to create a constant. First we are going to use the Mongoose, and this will be equals to the require, and we are going to use Mongoose here. All right, so we have imported the Mongoose. Now I'm going to create a function which will be constant dbconnect, and this is going to be an arrow function, and we are going to use an async await, as this will be asynchronous call. All right, and in the end we just need to export. So I'm going to use the module.export, which will be equals to the dbconnect. And in this what we have to do is I will come here, and then we are going to create a constant connect, and this will be equals to the await mongoose.connect. So this is how we are going to do the connection, and here we need to use our connection string. So our connection string is process.env.connection string. So we are going to use the connection underscore string. All right, so we got the connection string, we got the connect here, and now what we can do is we can just use a console so that we know, okay, the database is connected. So I'm going to use the console.log. I'm going to use the backticks, and here I will have the database connected, and I can pass some values. So the first value which I want to pass is the connect.connection, and connection dot, it is going to give us some properties. So I will have the host. All right, and then there is a second value which I want to have is the dollar. I'm going to have the connect.connection.name. all right, and the other thing is if there is any error, then in that case we will just catch the error. So for that we need to put this into a try catch block. So I will go here, I will use the try. Okay, I'm going to cut here, I will put it here, then I'm going to use the catch, and we are going to have the error in the catch. All right, now here I'm going to use the console.log to log my error if there is any, and if there's an error I will just use the process exit so that it exit the program. All right, now we have this DB connect, and we also have the database connection here. Now we can just use it into our index.js. So I'm going to go here, and we have to import it first. So let's go here, and I'm going to import. I will have the constant db connect, and this will be equals to the require, and we are going to have dot slash in config, and in the config we are going to have the db connect. All right, now we have to call this function. So I'm going to have the db connect function. So in order our application to read the env file values, what I can do is I can restart my server. Okay, so here we see that we get a failure message, and that is could not connect to any of the servers in the MongoDB Atlas. There could be an issue with the IP address, that my IP address isn't whitelisted. So you make sure that you whitelist your IP address. So now I have whitelisted my IP address. I can just do npm run dev, and now we see that the database connected, and this is the cluster, and this is the name of my collection. All right, so now we have the database connection established. The next thing what we have to do is we can create the routes for our authentication. So for that I will close everything, and if we go to our routes, then in the routes we can just create the file for our auth routes. So I'm going to go here, we click, I will have the auth routes dot nodejs. Okay, and in the auth routes, what we can do is we can just import the express, and this will be equals to require, and we can have the express here. Once we have the express, what we can do is we can create a constant. We can have the router, which will be equal to the express dot router. All right, and then we can create our routes. So I will have the router dot host, and where I will have the endpoint as register, and then we can just define the request response. But instead of defining a request response, we are going to put the logic into the controller. So for now, I will just have a register here. All right, but we need to create this register function into our controller. So I'm going to copy this again. I will put it here, and this one will be the login, and I'm going to change this to login. So we are going to create a login function. Now let's import this. So I will have the module dot export, and I will have the router. Before I use this router into my index.js, I would like to create the controller file. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to create here the auth controller.js. And in the auth controller.js, I will have the constant register, which will be an arrow function. All right, and then I'm going to have another constant login, which will also be an arrow function. All right, we have these two, and then I will also export them. So what I will do is I will have the module dot export, and I'm going to export the register, and then I will export the login. Login. All right, now we can just use this two into the auth routes. So I can go here, I will create a constant. I will have the register, and I will have the login, and they both will be coming from the require, and I will have the dot dot slash. I will go to the controllers, and in the controllers I will have the auth controller. All right, we have this two. Now if we go here, what we will do is we are going to use the async. Here also I'm going to use the async. Okay, and then we are going to have the request response. I will also have a request response here. All right, so now what we will do is whenever we have a request here, we need to register the user. So first thing what from the user we will have is we are going to take the username, we're going to have the password, and then we are also going to have the role. So we will have these three filled from the user as a request body. So I'm going to have my request dot body. All right, and we have to define a constant. All right, so after destructuring of these three values, we will also need to have that these three values should be the properties on the user object whenever we create the model. So maybe before we go and write this, we might create a model, and then let's do that first. I will go to the model, and in the model we can create a file which will be the user model.js. All right, now in this user model we will be using the Mongoose schema. So I will have the Mongoose, which will be equals to the require Mongoose. All right, and here we can create the user schema. So I will have the user schema, and this will be equals to the new Mongoose dot schema. All right, and this is going to be a object inside that. And here we can define all the properties. So the first property is the username, and this username will have a type as string. So I will have the type as string. Then this will have a required property. So we are going to have the required as true. And then we are also going to define a unique property on it so that it will have a unique value. All right, so I'm going to have the true. Now we have the username. The next property is the password. So we are going to have the password, and the password will also be having a type as string, and this will be true. Okay, the third one will be the role, and in the role what we are going to do is we are going to have a type as string. A role will be a string. Then we will have the required, which will be true. Then we are also going to define the enum that will contain the type of the value the role will have. So we are going to have a enum here. All right, and in the enum we are going to define admin, we are going to define manager as a role, and we are going to define user as a role. All right, and then I will simply define the timestamp here. So I will have the timestamp, and I'm going to define timestamp as true. Okay, so this is how our model of the user schema looks like. We have the username, password, role. we have the timestamp, and then we are simply going to export it. So I will have the module dot export, which will be equals to the mongoose dot model, and then we are going to name the model, the name is user, and we are going to define the user schema here. All right, so we are ready with our user model. Now we can go back to the auth controller, and then we can just continue here. Now in the auth controller, the first we will need the user schema. So I will have the user schema. So I will have require, and this will be coming from the // models, and we are going to have the user model. Okay, but apart from that, we will also need the bcrypt library, which will help us to hash the raw password which we have received from the request body. So I'm going to use the bcrypt, which will be equals to require, and we are going to use the bcrypt.js here. Okay, then we will also need a JWT, which will be the JSON Web Token. So whenever a user logged in, then on successful login, we need to give the token to the user. So I will have the constant JWT, and this will be equals to the require, and we are going to have a JSON Web Token here. All right, so we have everything what is required. And for the login, we will need a request body, but that request body will only have the username and the password. We will not define the role there. Okay, I will just remove this. Now first let's start work on the register a user. So I will have the username, password and role, and then first I have to hash my password. So I will have the hashed password, and this will be equals to the await bcrypt dot hash. So there's a hash function on the bcrypt, and then we are going to pass our raw password, and along with the raw password we also need to pass the salt number, which will be required to hash the password. So I have the salt as 10. All right, we have the hash password. Now let's create a new user. So I will have a new user, which will be equals to the new user. All right, and this user is actually the user schema, and in this we are going to define the values. We will first need the username, we will need the password, and the password will be the hashed password, and in the end we will need the role. Now once we create a new user, what we can do is we can save that user. So I will have the await, we take this new user and we use the save method, so that will save the data into the database. Once we save it, we can just give the response back. So I will have the response as status. So let's have the status code first. So I will have the response status 201. That means a record is created, and with that we will also pass the JSON data to the user, and in this we are going to have a message, and in the message what I will do is I will have user registered with username, and I will just pass the username with which the user has been registered. So I will have the username here. All right, so this is what we are going to do is it's a very simple, we are not doing much here. We are just taking the username, password, role from the request body, we hash the password, we create a new user, and we save the new user. You can also put the try catch block here. So what I can do is I can have a try. All right, I will cut this, I will put it here, and then I can also have a catch error, and in the case of an error we can just give a new response, a different kind of a response, which could be an error response. So I can come here, I can change the status to maybe if it's a server error or it's a user error, depends, you need to handle that, but for now I will just stay maybe 500, and that defines that it was a server error, and we are going to just simply give a message something went wrong. Okay, this will be something went wrong. All right, so this is how we have our registered user. We will test it later on, but for now we will just keep it as it is. Okay, now in the case of a login, so if we want a user to get logged in, the first thing we need to do is we need to find a particular user with the help of a username. Since for the username we have already defined it as a unique, so we can just use it as a property to find it. So what I will do is I will go here, I will have a constant user, which will be await, and then we need to use the user schema dot find one, because we are going to get a one value here for the username because it's a unique property. All right, now if we get the user, or if we don't get the user, let's say, so if no user, then in that case we need to throw some error message. So for that what I can do is I can also put this into a try catch block, cut it, put it here, I will have a catch which will have an error, and in the error I'm going to use the same response. So I'm going to copy this. I will put it here. All right. But here, if the user, we did not find the user, then in that case, what I will do is I'm going to return response dot status, and I'm going to give 404 that it was not found. And then I will have a JSON response, and I will use the message, and let's have the message here, user with username. We can use our username here, and we can have not found. All right. So if the user is not found, we can just throw an error. But if we find the user, then in that case, what we have to do is we have to match the password of that user with the password we have received in the request body. So I will have a constant is match. I will use the await. Oops, it should be a match, not march. Now we will use the bcrypt library again, and we will compare the password. So we have to compare the password with the password that we have received from the request body with the password that we have got from our user object. All right. Now once the password is matched, it's fine. But if it doesn't match, so let's say if it doesn't match, then in that case we need to give the response back. So I will have a return, and we are going to have the response status as 400 because it's a client side error. And then we are going to pass a JSON. Let's pass the message. So I'm going to have the message, and we are going to pass the message as invalid credentials. All right. And the last part is that if everything went well, then in that case, what we will do is we are going to generate a token and give the token as a response back to the user. So we are going to have a token, and to generate a token, we are going to use the jwt.sign. So we have a sign here, and in the sign, what I have to pass is I'm going to give the ID of the user. So let's have the ID of the user dot underscore ID. Since we are using underscore because the underscore ID is automatically generated whenever you create a record in the MongoDB database. We are going to see it when we test our register API. But for now, you understand that we have an underscore ID, and along with that, we also need to pass the role so that we can check when a user login, we can check that what role the user have. All right, we have these role, and with this, we will also need to pass our JWT secret, which we have it in our process.env.jwt underscore secret. All right, and with this, you will see here what we have, all the values here. We have this JWT secret, and the last part, we will need to define the expiry of our token. So I will have the expires in, and we want the token to be expired in 1 hour. All right, once we have the token, we can give the response back. So I will have the response dot status. The status is 200, and along with that we will have the JSON, and in the JSON we are going to pass the token. So now we have done with our API for the register and the login. Now we can go and check them. So what I will do is first we have this routes, which is here. Then we need to define these routes into our index.js. So in the index.js, let's define them. I will have app.use, and in this use I will have the slash API slash auth, and here I can define my auth routes. All right, I need to import the auth routes. So I will go here, I will have the constant auth routes, and those auth routes will come from the require, and I will have the routes slash auth routes. All right, so we have this routes. Now if we want to give a try, we can definitely give a try. So what I will do is I'm going to use the Thunder client to test my APIs. So I'm going to click here, and here I can just click on the new request. So we will have the new request. What I will do is first let's have the local host. So I'm going to use http://localhost colon 80, oops, not the port is 7001 slash API slash auth slash register. All right, this will be a post API, and in this post API we will also need to pass the body. So I'm going to have a username first. So let's have username as the page. All right, then I'm going to have the password, and the password will be maybe 1 2 3 4 5 6, and then I will also need to define the role, what kind of a role the page has. So I have a role as an admin. All right, let's give a try. I'm going to click on send, and you see that the user registered with username Dipesh. Now if you want to go into the MongoDB and check, let's go. So I will go here, I have this user here, I'm going to refresh it, and we see that we have an object here which is username Dipesh. The password is not a raw password, it's a hash password, and the role is as an admin. So we have this user. Now we can go and create more user. We can have another user as Nikesh, and I want Nikesh to be a manager. So I have a manager. I'm going to click on send, and we see that the user is registered. And I want one more user, which is Amit, and Amit is a simple user role. So I'm going to click on send, and we see that all three users have been created. So if I refresh it, we have all the three users: Dipesh, who is an admin, Nikesh, who is a manager, and Amit, who is a user. All right, so we have all the three records into our database. Now the next we need to do is we need to check the login feature works or not. So what I will do is I'm going to change this to login, and I'm going to remove the role, and I want to log in with the page, maybe. Yeah, now in this case, when I do a login, I should be able to get the token in the response. So I will click on send, and you see that I get a token. So this is a token, and using this token I can make another API calls for the user if I want to access an admin API, if I want to access a manager API, or if I want to access the user's API. So the first part of our project, which was the register and the login, works successful. Now the second part we need to do is we will first create the APIs endpoints. So let's go to the routes, and in the routes we are going to create the user routes. So I will have the user routes.js. All right, so for the user routes, what I will do is let's import the express first. So I will have the express, which will be equals to the require express. Now let's create a constant which will be router equals to the express dot router. All right, now we have the router. Now let's create the routes. So first I will have only admin can access this route. Okay, then I'm going to have another one which will be both admin and manager can access this route, and then I will have the third one, all can access this route. So I have these three routes. Now the first what I will do is let's create those routes. So here I'm going to have the router dot get. I will have the slash admin. I will simply have a request response, and then I will have an arrow function, and here I will simply give a JSON response. We are not going to build any functionality here, but we will be able to achieve our role-based access control here. So I will have a message, and on this message I will have welcome admin. All right, I will just copy it, I will put it here, and I will also put it here. Now this will be the manager, and I'm going to change this to manager, and this will be user. I'm going to change this to user. Now we have this routes. What we can do is we can just export it. So I will have the module dot export, and I'm going to export the router here. Now we can just import this router into our index.jsx. So I will go here, I will have the app use, I will have the slash API slash users, and then here I'm going to have the user routes. Let's import it. So I'm going to go here, I will have a constant user routes which will be equals to the require, and I'm going to have slash routes slash user routes. All right, now we have the routes. Now if we just go and simply test them, so what I will do is I'm going to go to my Thunder client, I will have a new endpoint here, and here I will just copy, and I'm going to go here, I will copy it here, and I'm going to change this to users, I will change this to admin, and if I simply going to fire a request, I will get welcome admin. If I have a manager, I will get welcome manager, and if I have a user, I will get welcome user. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to make these three routes as protected, and in order to do the protected route, what we will need to do is we will only allow if a user is authenticated, then only you can access these routes. And how we will authenticate is we are going to authenticate the user based on the access token. All right, so we go to the user routes, and in the user routes we have to write a middleware. So you will see that we have this middleware folder, but right now we don't have any middleware here. So for that, what we will do is first middleware is to make the routes as protected. So to do that, I'm going to create a middleware which will be the auth middleware, and that will just intercept my request, and then it will check the token and see that if the user is authenticated, then only it will allow the user to access those routes. All right, so here what I will do is I will have the JWT first, since I need to validate the token. So I'm going to use require JSON web token. All right, then we are going to create a constant, and we are going to use a verified token which will be a arrow function. All right, then we are just going to export. So I will have the module export, and in this I will use the verify token. Okay, so now I have this, and in this middleware what you have is you have a request, you have a response, and you have a third argument, which is the next. So the first thing we will do is I'm going to use a variable let as token, and then I need to have my auth headers. So whenever you get an access token in this, so you have this access token. Now if we want to make this route as a protected route, what we will do is we need to pass the access token in the headers. So if we go to the headers, I will go here, I will use the authorization, and in the authorization I'm going to pass my token as a bearer, and then I'm going to pass the token, and then I will fire the request. Here you will still see that we get the welcome user, but we need to validate this token so that we know that only authenticated users are able to access this route. Let's go back into our middleware. So here we need to get the auth headers first. So let's have the auth header, and this auth header we will get it from request dot headers dot authorization. So we will have this authorization. Okay, we can also use another variant that if someone use the authorization as an lowercase, so I will have this as a lowercase authorization. So we get the auth headers from here. Now from the auth headers, what we will do is we will check that if these auth header is available or this auth header dot starts with. So I'm going to use the start with, and it should start with a bearer token because it's a bearer token. So I will have a bearer token. Then in that case, what I have to do is I have to extract the token value. So I will have the token which will be equals to the auth header dot split, and with the split I'm going to split here, and I'm going to take the first index value. All right, so let me explain you what is this. So now you're going to get this auth header, you will get this value. Once you get this value, what you will do is you're going to split this. When you split it, you will get the two different paths in the array. At the 0th index you will get the bearer, at the first index you will get the token value. So this is what we are going to do here. We get the token value, and then now we are going to just check it that if this token value, so if we don't have any token, then in that case what we will do is we are going to return a response dot status 401 dot json, and then we return a message here, message, and our message is no token, authorization denied. All right, but there's a case that we get the token. Now if we get the token, we need to decode that token. So what I will do is I'm going to use a try catch block. Let's put an error here. All right, if it's an error, we are going to have the response dot status. I'm going to use the status as 400 dot json. We're going to pass the message, and we will have token is not valid. All right, but if the token is valid, then in that case what we will do is we are going to decode the token, and to decode the token what we will do is we are going to have a constant decode, and you have the another method. So in the auth controller, if you go and see, then we use the jwt.sign method in order to generate a token. But if you want to decode it, there's another method which will be jwt.verify, where you pass the token and you have to verify with the same environment variable, which is the jwt secret. So I will have the process.env jwt underscore secret. All right, once you decode it, what you will do is we are going to have the request user is equals to decode. All right, and then we can just use a console log to log our user, the decoded user. So I will have the decoded user is, and we can just have the request.user here. All right, so now if we want to use this, what we can do is we can use this verified token, and we can just intercept the request. So if I go to my user routes, then in the user routes, first let's import it. So I'm going to go here, constant verified token, which will be equals to the require. We are going to have the middlewares, and then in the middlewares we are going to have the auth middleware. All right, and here what we can do is we can just define the middleware here. So the first middleware will be the verified token. All right, and we can just define the verified token just on the admin, and for the other two we will just keep it as it is. So let's go. Now if I want to have that localhost user, if I send it, I see users. If I go here and if I have an admin, then in that case it's processing and it is not giving any response back. So for that, what we can do is we can go and check. So maybe first what I will do is I will just change or maybe I cancel the request first. Okay, I will go and I will change this. and now I'm going to send it. Token is not valid. Okay, so if we go to the middleware, then in the middleware we see that this decoding something happened here, and after happening something here, what happened actually is we got this response status and we got that the token is not valid. Okay, but if we have the valid token, so here you will see that we had a valid token, so we can just take a valid token from this one. So what I will do is I will copy and I will go here, I will go to my bearer token. Okay, I will put the valid token, and if I send a request, I should be able to see welcome admin. But here you will see that we also get the ID and the role is admin, but we don't get the response back. So that means we have made some mistake here. If we go here, then we see that we have the decoded user. After the decoded user, we need to forward the request. So here you have a next. So what we will do is we will go here and then we can just fire the next. So it is going to forward the request and then we will be able to see. So if I go back here, now if this time I send the request, I see welcome admin. All right, now let's say that if we have if we don't pass a token or something, if this is wrong, all right, and if we send a request, then we see that the token is not valid. But for the same thing, if we go to the manager, since we are not verifying the token on the manager and this manager is not a protected route, we will be able to see welcome manager. If we go to the user, we will be able to see the user because these are not protected routes. If we want to make them protected, you go to the user route and you put verify token here. All right, now if I want to go and check, if I change this to manager, then you will see that token is not valid. If I go to the admin, you will see token is not valid. If I go to the user, you will see the user is still able to access because user is an open route. All right, so first let's make them protected routes. So I'm going to have the verify token on all the three. Okay, now we have the verify route on all the three. That means if you have a valid token, irrespective of your role, you will be able to access the routes. So let's say if I have Nikesh, who is a manager, so I'm going to send the request. I get an access token here. I copy the token. I will go here. I will change the token here and I will put the token here and I will send. Then you will see that we get welcome user. If I go to the manager, I see welcome manager. If I go to the admin, you see I see welcome admin. All right, but if we don't have a token, all right, if I don't pass a token and if I send the request, you will see the request get processed, but nothing is response is returned. So what I will do is for that case, if you go here, you will see that if this condition fails or if this is false, then we don't have an else condition here. So in that case, what I will do is I will write else and we will return a response. I will copy, I will put here. All right, and now if we want to try, if I go here, if I send the request, you see no token, authorization denied, because we did not pass the authorization token. If we pass it, then we will be able to see that we are an admin. So this was a protected route. Now what we are going to do here is we are going to build the role-based access control. If a user has a particular role, then only we allow the user to access that route. So for that, we will be going here again and we are going to create a new middleware. So we have this, I'm going to create a new middleware file which will be the role middleware. So I will have the role middleware.js. all right, and in the role middleware.js, what I will do is I'm going to create a function which will be the, maybe let's have a constant authorize role. All right, this will be an arrow function and then I will simply export this. So I will have the export dot, it will be module dot export and I'm going to export the authorize role. All right, now I can just use this authorize role into my user routes. I will create a constant. I will have authorize roles and this will be equals to require. I will have dot slash middleware slash role middleware. All right, so I have this middleware. Now what I will do is I will copy and I'm going to add one more middleware to this. So I can add one more middleware and on this middleware I can actually pass some values. So this one, what I will want is I will want that only admin can access this one. I will copy, I will go here and I will add it. I want that admin and manager both can access this route. All right, and for the third one, what I will do is I'm going to copy and I'm going to add it here, and here I want admin manager, manager spelling is wrong, and the user, all three can access this route. Okay, so I will also correct this manager spelling here, and here we want that if a user has an admin role, the user should be able to access this route. If a user have a admin or a manager, the user should be able to access this route. If a user have admin, manager, user, then the user will be able to access this route. All right, Now we can just go into the role, and here you will see that we are passing different roles. So what I will do is I'm going to destructure allowed roles. All right, and then here I'm going to return a function which will be the request, response, and next, and this will be an arrow function. And here what I will do is that if allowed roles dot includes, we have this request, we check the user, and we check the role of the logged in user. All right, if this is satisfied, then in that case we need to return that the response status is 403, the user is not allowed to access the route, and we are going to give a JSON response which will be message. This will be message, and we are going to have here access denied. All right, so now we have done this, and once we have the access denied, we are going to use the next to forward our request. So what I will do is I will go first here, and I will just start with the admin. So let's have an admin. I will send the request. Not admin, let's have the page, because this page is an user which has a role as admin. So I'm going to send a request, take an access token, go to this route, use my access token, and send a request, and it will give welcome admin. I can also access a manager route. I can also access a user route. Because I am an admin user, I can access all the routes. Let's give a try for Nikesh, who is a account which has a role as manager. If we go and check, then we see Nikesh has a role as manager. So now if I get an access token, if I take the token, if I go here, and if I send a request, you see I can access the user. If I go for manager, I will be able to access the manager. But now if I go to the admin, I will get access denied, because if you have a manager role, you cannot access the admin routes. So that's where you see it's a role-based access control. If we want to try the third user, which is Amit, who has a role as user, let's have Amit. And if we go and check, Amit is a user role. Let's take an access token. You have a copy, go here, change the token, send a request. You get access denied. You try for a manager route, you get access denied. And if you try for a user route, you get welcome user. So that's how you can define different roles, and then based on the roles, you can give access for your APIs. So this was a classic example of how you can implement the role-based access control in your project. It's a small project, but the same implementation can be applied for your real world projects. You just need to define your APIs properly, but how you define the access control, it's the same way what we have done in this project. You can also use the same access control to display different components on the front end. Let's say you have an admin user who have access to your whole application on the front end side. But if you have a manager, then manager have a different view on your front end application. If a user, you have a different view for the user, and you can manage the user interface based on the roles that you have received from your backend system. So that's all I have in this video. I hope you liked the video. A thumbs up is appreciated. You can also connect with me via Facebook or Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter for latest updates. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. Thank you. Thanks for watching.